All right, so 3 pros that I have with the Freet Vibe include number 1, I think if you're looking for that lighter weight barefoot shoe for some training and casual wear, and you don't feel like dropping a ton of money on a Vivo Barefoot Primus Lite knit, but you do want kind of like that knit style shoe, this can be an awesome option to look into. It almost kind of reminds me of the Nexus knit from Xero shoes, and I kind of put this shoe in the same product category as that model. However, with this shoe, I find the upper to actually be a little bit more lax compared to the Xero shoes and the Vivo Barefoot model. So I think if you are wanting that knit shoe that has an upper that is a little bit more form-fitting for the foot, or might have a little bit more laxity to the lateral and medial sides, this shoe can be a great option to explore, especially in the context of comfort, because this shoe has been exceptionally comfortable. The second pro that I have with this shoe is I really like the sole construction of this model. So with this shoe, the insole is a 3mm thick Ortholite insole, and then you also have a 2mm thick Connect Max EVA midsole. So the blend of these two give this model a little bit more shock absorption than other barefoot shoes. And so that said, if you are a beginner or you're somebody that wants that more casual and training focused barefoot shoe that has a little bit more cushion to it, now note I say a little bit, this could be a good option to look into. Plus with the rubber tread here, they are pretty aggressive or deep lugs, so that also adds to the stack height of the shoe to give you a bit more shock absorption and cushion in that context. The third pro that I have with this model is I like the width of this shoe. Because we have a nice wide midfoot and forefoot, and because the upper is a little bit more lax, I see this as being a really good option for folks with exceptionally wide feet and flat feet that don't like any form of arch in their shoe, or they constantly feel restricted in more athletic fitting barefoot shoes that have a bit more of that taper from the midfoot to the forefoot. So I think if you are somebody who's been looking for that model that does a decent job regarding width, that you can train in and wear on a casual basis, the Freet Vibe could be an awesome option to explore. But now let's talk about a couple of cons that I have with this model. So 2 small cons that I have with the Freet Vibe is number 1, because that upper is a little bit more relaxed, I do have some spillover issues in the shoe when training laterally. Do they really hinder the performance of this model? Not necessarily, and I wouldn't necessarily be super concerned with that unless you absolutely hate spillover at all, but it is somewhat noticeable in the shoe just because with this upper, it does have a little bit more stretch to it, and there's not a lot of rigidity here on the lateral and medial side. So keep that in mind if you plan to use this shoe for more athletic focused sessions where you're gonna be doing a lot of lateral explosive work. Also with that, the tongue does slide at times. There is no tongue gusset. Despite having a loop here on the tongue, it can slide when you're doing more lateral work as well, or even when running. So I've had this shoe, for example, when sprinting, have that tongue start to slide, and that's kind of annoying. So it doesn't really necessarily totally hinder the shoe's performance, but they are very niche things that I've picked up with on this shoe. The second con that I have with this model, and this is very, very niche, and it might just be a me thing, but with this tread pattern here, when wearing this outside, and if it's muddy at all, this is a pain in the butt to clean. It is not my favorite shoe for cleaning. Like even with this review, I tried to like wipe them down and I was still having trouble getting every little spot out of the outsole on this model. So I think if you're gonna be that person who's wearing the shoe in rocks, but also mud with rocks and like more like gravel or like finite pieces of rock, that could be something to worry about with the shoe because they're gonna pick them up, and I don't think they're gonna be necessarily the easiest to clean or get out of. So just food for thought there, and that's gonna be a very niche context, but definitely a con if you are somebody who's like, I don't wanna deal with stuff in my outsole tread whatsoever, so definitely keep that in mind. But now let's talk about the performance of the Freet Vibe. To break down the performance of the Vibe, I'll discuss the shoe's performance for lifting, cross-training, short runs, and daily wear. When it comes to lifting, the shoe has been pretty standard, and I see them as a really good option for folks who primarily want that barefoot shoe for strength work and then maybe some cross-training sessions here and there. So when it comes to lifting, there are 3 things that I like about this shoe. Number 1, I like that you can take this insole out and there's a finished internal construction. So similar to most Vivo Barefoot and Xero shoes models, this model is great for doing that because you can take that out and get closer to the ground for things like RDLs and deadlifts where you want a little bit more ground feel and even less stack height. I also really like the overall width of this shoe. So this model is very easy to splay the toes in and let the arches do their thing and just kind of collapse while you're training. So this model never really feels restrictive for your leg days or when training in general. And then the third thing that I like about this shoe is its flexibility, but also that outsole grip. So outside, the outsole isn't necessarily my favorite, but in the gym, it works exceptionally well regarding its grip and how it bites on turf and different surfaces. So if you're looking for that barefoot shoe for lifting and you like lighter weight models that have a little bit more flex in their upper, that are a bit more comfortable, that's where I think the shoe works really well in the context of lifting. For cross training, the shoe also works pretty dang well. And now its lightweight nature makes it excel for cross training. And I also like that it's very comfortable. My only issue with this model is, once again, because we have that recycled bottle yarn fly knit upper, you can have a bit of spillover in the shoe and that tongue can move at times. So if you're doing a lot of explosive work, expect that to potentially be an issue. If you crank the laces pretty dang tight, that kind of mitigates that, and that's what I've been kind of doing to create some work around there to mitigate the tongue sliding and then also feeling I'm spilling over the shoe. But that is food for thought there. But I do like this model overall for cross training too, because you do have that 3mm thick Lite insole, so it does give you a bit more cushion compared to other barefoot shoes. So if I don't feel like having as much impact on my feet when jumping and whatnot for sessions, this has been a really good option to go to. When it comes to short runs, the shoe should work as well. I put them in the same realm again as the Nexus knit in that model. I like to use them for short interval runs. I would not necessarily use this model for super long distance runs. You might want to look into something a little bit more specific for that. But because this model's outsole is pretty aggressive, I think this is a shoe that you can wear outdoors and indoors. And since there is a bit more shock absorption, it also is pretty comfortable for running. So if you are getting into running in your barefoot shoes and you do buy this shoe mostly for training and then casual wear, but you want to start maybe acclimating to running, if you're doing shorter interval runs that range from like 400 to 800, even 1600 meters. When it comes to daily wear, I really like this model, and it's because it's so dang comfortable. So this is a good barefoot shoe that you can kind of leave laced like this, so a little bit looser, and then slide on and off. Like I don't have to adjust the laces if I'm just popping this on to go walk the dog or run errands in. So I like that a lot about this shoe. I don't always necessarily like having to undo my laces and whatnot. And if you're just walking this for walking and casual wear, the tongue isn't really an issue regarding its security, so I wouldn't necessarily stress that, especially if you like leaving them looser like myself. So for the most part, this model has been exceptional, and I put them in the same product category as the Primus Lite knit and the Nexus knit. And I like that they add another option to that product category. The Primus Lite knit, it's a little bit more sporty and low profile. The Nexus knit is more like that budget friendly low profile option from the Primus Lite knit, and the Freet Vibe is more of like your budget friendly cousin that has a slightly more lax upper construction. So it does have a slightly bigger upper volume overall, which I think can make it a little bit unique compared to those two models. So when it comes to the price of the Freet Vibe, you can expect to pay $115. To be honest, I feel like that price point is pretty fair for what this shoe offers. It has some pretty unique construction features, and I think if you're buying it for some casual use and then also lifting and you're gonna rotate them with other footwear, this model should last you a while. My model has done pretty good with durability thus far, so I have hopes that it's gonna last a while. So I think $115 for this shoe is a good deal, but if you can find coupons, obviously use them. And as always, you can shop this shoe in the description and comments below it, and that helps the channel a ton. All right, so now let's answer the question, who should buy the Freet Vibe? So number one, I think if you like knit shoes and you want a model for lifting and daily wear, that's where this model is going to excel really well. The second context is if you're new to barefoot shoes, I think this can be a pretty good option. The price point isn't crazy high. It kind of has all the construction features that you want with a new barefoot shoe, and because it does have a little tiny midsole and a 3mm thick Lite insole, it gives you a little bit of variability regarding the cushion you get with the shoe, so it doesn't feel as harsh regarding impact on the feet and ground as some models. The third context is if you do have an exceptionally wide foot and you want an upper that kind of form fits around your foot that you can spill over a little bit at times and not necessarily totally hinder your performance with, this can be a good option as well. Plus, we don't have a super aggressive taper here in the midfoot, so I don't think there's gonna be any arch issues with this model for most folks with flatter and wider feet at that. Now, who shouldn't buy this shoe? Number one, I think if you want a shoe with absolutely no lugs and you want to get as close to the ground as possible, this might not be the best option for you. And the second context is if you're somebody that hates spillover and just doesn't want any, and you want a very much more rigid upper construction for cross training and even maybe some CrossFit workouts, this is not going to be your best model. I think friction can cause this knit to break down a little bit faster if you're having a ton of rub on the top of the shoe, so it's not going to be your best model in that. And also, if you are doing more lateral work, expect a tiny bit of spillover at times. It's not going to be an all the time thing. It's not always going to hinder your performance, but if you hate that, definitely think about that before investing in this shoe. When it comes to sizing and fit of the Freet Vibe, I think most folks should be safe going true to size in this model. So I wear a size 10 in all of my barefoot shoes, and I find this model to fit true regarding length. I have an E-width foot, and no matter if I'm going sockless, wearing thin no-show socks or thicker socks, this model also fits exceptionally well. So I think if you have a narrow, regular, or even slightly wider foot width, this model will work really well going true to size width. The width of this shoe, I would compare it most to like a Vivo Barefoot model. However, because the upper has a bit more volume and it's a bit more loose, I almost find it to feel a little bit more spacious than some Vivo Barefoot models. So if you find that those models often feel just too low profile or too snug on your foot, this could be a really good option to explore. All right, so now let's break down the weight, heel toe drop, and insole in the Freet Vibe. So this is a size EU 44 model, UK 9.5, and we have a weight of 9.45 ounces. The heel to toe drop in this shoe is 0 millimeters, and this model once again has this 3 millimeter thick Ortholite insole that you can take out, and there's a finished internal construction. All right, so now let's break down the construction of the Freet Vibe. So the upper of this shoe is built with a recycled bottle yarn fly net. So this material is very breathable, it has a nice stretch to it, and it breaks in wicked fast. This model honestly felt really good after the first use with it. The back of the boot back here has a little bit of padding, and it has some synthetic overlays. And looking at the midfoot of this shoe, we have 5 core eyelets that go up. We also have these little eyelets here that honestly kind of remind me of that Flyknit used in the Nike models. So I feel like that's like a nice little nod to Nike shoes if you've ever worn those old Flyknit models. So as you can see, you do have some additional little quote unquote Flyknit loops there. I'm not gonna call them that though, because obviously there's probably a different name there for Freet versus Nike. Looking at the toe box up here, we do have a little bit of a toe guard on the internal part of the shoe. It wraps the medial to lateral side of this shoe. And then looking at the sole of this model, we have a multi-grip rubber tread that wraps the entirety of the shoe. It does come up on the lateral, medial, and heel and forefoot of this model, so that does add a nice little amount of grip there. Again though, these lugs are pretty deep, so they do catch stuff at times if you're walking in like muddy and rocky terrains. And then once again, this model does have a 3 millimeter thick Ortholite insole that you can take out, and it has a finished internal construction. This model is pretty simplistic, but each feature I feel like it does have a little bit of a uniqueness to it. But if you have additional questions on this shoe, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally. All right, y'all, that's my review of the Freet Vibe. Honestly, I feel like if you want that knit barefoot shoe for training and some casual use, and you don't feel like dropping 170 plus on a pair from Vivo Barefoot, and you don't necessarily love Xero shoes, this can be a really great option to explore. They have been subtly strong across all the activities that I've put them through for the most part. Sans a very couple niche activities that I've mentioned in this video. If you have additional questions on the Freet Vibe, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always, y'all, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next one.